Right on. Free the land, rebuild the win. What up, though? What's happening, Detroit? What's happening, world? Welcome to this week's edition of Detroit. We do mind dying with myself, Kwasi and Tawana, my comrades, Yusef, Bunchy Shakur, and Tawana Honeycomb Petty. Airing live from the Detroit is Different Studios. We just getting set up, you know what I'm saying? Bear with us. Bear with us just a second. We got a very interesting topic that we want to bring to you. We want to talk about something that is very important to us as a people engaged in struggle. As we try to move forward. We're supposed to kind of start with a few news bits and bites. Anything new in the news that you all want to highlight?
Yeah, I don't. You know how I am. I'm watching the congressional hearings and all that jazz, and so I'm thinking a lot about the TikTok hearing,
Okay.
like how they had the CEO testify before the government and the hypocrisy that is, right? So you think about it. The reason why he's under such scrutiny is because it's like a Chinese-owned company. And they feel as though this is like communist rule, having access to our data, which I think that the government should scrutinize any corporate tech company that has access to all our information, right? But it's hypocrisy because you got China banning Chat GP3 and you got the US trying to ban TikTok. And so it's really just competition between them, and we're caught up in the middle of it. And so I find that fascinating. And so, yeah, I tell people to like look into that yourselves, but it's really, I find that kind of stuff interesting.
Yes, that's very hypocritical, particularly as one of the things they talked about was election tampering and being able to get privileged information, government information, because government officials use TikTok and they had to ban TikTok from government phones. Right. And it's like, why would you have these gimmicky apps on a government phone in the first place?
Right.
Why are government officials worried about these silly social media apps, except that we worry more about publicity and marketing themselves than doing the people's work.
But see, they recognize it as a potential weapon, right? So they convince us that it's okay to have it, but they recognize it as a potential weapon, which is why they don't want it in the hands of competing governments. And so what we need to do is recognize that same potential for those, and a lot of organizers leverage social media for organizing, etc. But our data is beyond. They say data is the new oil. It's beyond that. It's so much deeper than that. But that'll be another show.
You're right. I watched some of the hearings as well, and one of the congresspersons who was interrogating the CEO of TikTok talked about how the apps, were using, tracking everyone. And I found it hypocritical because Facebook tracks everyone, Google tracks everyone. You talk too loud about something near your phone,
right?
You're gonna open your phone and find it on your phone. Yeah. And so
Facebook CEO has been grilled before Congress, and he's paid out millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits for that. However, they have the money to burn, so it doesn't phase them.
Right. So I mean, but it's hypocritical to say the least to target one when all of them do exactly the same thing.
I agree.
So yes, that's the news. Anything else? Anything else? You see anything in the news that's noteworthy, my brother?
Excuse me. Almost definitely. Actually, it's a little bit old, but I think it's still a relevant topic. Everybody know Deion Sanders, right?
Right.
So, he's the coach of Colorado. He left Jackson State. And I don't know if he's jokingly, but definitely sounded serious as a heart attack, where he described the type of players that he wanted to recruit, which was, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, he wanted the big lineman that comes from a single family home, from the single mama that's gonna run through walls.
Wow.
to be able to play for me. And he wants that quarterback that comes from a two-parent home that has the smarts, the intelligence, and et cetera, et cetera. It got obvious, and you hear it, it fits very interestingly within racial stigmas, racial tones, particularly that has existed for so long. And then in the overarching, those of us who follow NFL, the dynamic is the quarterback is more likely a white guy
Mm.
because he's been designated more smarter
Mm.
than black quarterbacks and so forth.
Strategic, huh?
Absolutely. So for to have Deion as prominent as he is doesn't dispute his ignorance, right? Which is on full display. But it begs the difference in terms of like the whole conversation when he left Jackson State and how we get caught up into the interest of the elite, and we get overly racialized, and without attaching the political consciousness to it, meaning political conscience, the accountability really being invested beyond just the racial component and shit.
Mm.
All right.
Yeah. That brute versus intellect is a lifelong, struggle.
All right. I don't have all the details just yet, but we have a breaking news story that's relevant. We'll be talking about just briefly the latest edition of the Rebuild newspaper, which the cover headlines refer to the neo-Confederate assault on Jackson, Mississippi. But just yesterday, Mississippi was hit by a tornado.
I saw that.
And they say at least 23 people were killed. It's north of Jackson. A couple small towns. At least 23 people are said to be dead.
One town was completely wiped out. Like there's nothing left.
Yes. I don't know the demographics on these particular towns at this point. But it's I strongly believe these may have been black towns. Mississippi is dotted with a lot of small, all black communities. And I'm not sure about the couple cities that they referred to, Silver City, Rolling Fork. So hopefully we all stay tuned to the news and see what's happening with our people down in the Black Belt. And again, like I said, we'll be talking about this just briefly. I hope trying to really encourage people to either go online if you're not in Detroit or Chicago or some of the other cities where this paper is circulated. We got some news. People are mobilizing around the neo-Confederate assault against Jackson, Mississippi, the state, trying to run roughshod, similarly how the state did over the city of Detroit when they imposed infirmary manager. Yes, Flint. Majority black populations across the state of Michigan. So, this is not a new phenomenon. There's a tendency, a trend through these right-wing conservative governments that just try to use the state to run roughshod over populations. So yes, it's very, very important. I just read that in South Carolina, what do they call them? Comptroller. The comptroller, person who keeps track of the finances of the state, who's been in office for some 20 years. They installing a new system down in South Carolina. I guess a technological system to keep track of the state finances and the in and outs of the money. And he was off by $3.5 billion.
Wow.
Over just over a couple of years. And none of the reports that I read suggested any, he's resigning. That was the headline, that he's resigning after this. He's not, I think he steps down April 30th, I guess, to create some kind of transition. But this is a right-wing official.
Can you imagine one of us being able to resign after $3 billion discrepancy?
Man, we talking about that's heavy. And not only this, I'm pretty certain that there was a lot of skimming going on.
Right.
One of the reports was pointing out that some of the situations was like payments to like state universities they was billing them twice, but the money only came out once. You know what I'm saying? And things like this. It was off $3.5 billion. And that's a phenomenal number. That's in the state of South Carolina in the Black Belt. So that's the report there. Moving on with our agenda, like I say, I want to just briefly, just flip through the pages, give people an idea of what we looking at in this next issue of Rebuild. We got some interesting pieces in here. Brother Yusef wrote a couple pieces. He did a tribute to Marshall Eddie Conway.
I mean, you keep referring to it. I don't know if you, to our listeners, can you give just a brief history of who puts this out and whatnot? You talked about it. We distributed nationwide in different cities.
Yes, Rebuild is the publication of the Rebuild Collective, which is a college organization within the New African Independence Movement. It advances a political line of New African Revolutionary Nationalism, advocating for in an alignment with Republican New Africa and other organizations, New African People Organization, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, an assortment of organizations within the New African Independence Movement for land and independence. That is the nationalist objective, the land being the Black Belt South, the minimum requirements being the states of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. Some say, we should add Florida to it. Ultimately, and let me be clear for those who, a lot of people look at this as us doing what the Europeans doing in terms of seizing indigenous people's land. One thing for certain is that we're not settlers. We didn't settle on this land. We were brought to this land against our will. And not only that, we were dispossessed of everything that we knew about ourselves as African people. Therefore, we have no home to return to in any concrete sense in terms of nationality. We can return to the continent for sure. And we don't discourage, and we encourage people who have the desire to return home, to repatriate to the motherland, to do so. However, we do recognize and acknowledge that African people in America are a unique branch of the African family, in the same fashion that Jamaicans are a unique branch of the African family, Haitians are a unique branch of the African family, and the Guyanese and Guyana and Grenadans and Trinidadians and Barbadians, all of us came over in the hulls of these slave ships and cultivated new identities in context of our struggle against our oppression and for the preservation of our human dignity. So similarly in America, while these European settlers who did come here intentionally and committed genocide to seize this land, they settled here, made this their home, displaced through genocide and land theft an entire population, and brought us over here for their seed capital to kind of jumpstart the economy.
So our paper is our own wing of the cadre, circulating our information.
Yes.
Certainly knowledge. Our knowledge also, historically, every organization has had some type of publication to be able to communicate ideas, things that you're talking about that seems like what the hell he's talking about, right? But here's the opportunity to be able to digest it, because we don't necessarily see ourselves in a different look, in a different light, particularly as a right to fight for independence. A right, the many things you were saying may shock the world, may shock individuals, but being able to digest this type of information is saying, like, this is not nothing new. I don't think this was born with you, right? This is existed long before you and I and Tawana, our different ideas. So I think this is important. How often we put it out?
It comes out quarterly right now. It's every 3 months. A new paper drops. You can also access it online, a digital PDF you can download at the rebuildcollective.org. Feel free to go there. You can get all back issues of this paper, and as well as other literature that comes out of the what was once known as the Spear and Shield Collective. One of our what we identify as one of our leading theoreticians who's no longer with us, an ancestor, brother Yakubu Owusu Yakubu, who was a political prisoner for 33 years, a member of the Black Liberation Army, a very humble, quiet, but deep thinking brother. So, but before we move on, I do want to move on. We're going to talk about, we talk about books in each issue to kind of introduce our audience to some, good literature, things to follow up on from a different range of perspective. But I do want to conclude relative to this land, because I was taking a long time to get around to it. But we we don't see ourselves as settlers. We do acknowledge and are in alignment and in solidarity with the indigenous nations. We have and relationships with the indigenous nations. And if we were to answer to anyone about this land, it would be the indigenous nations. And so, just for anyone who concerned with, I'm saying, whether or not we're doing on this land, but we are born on this land. We formed as New African people on this land. We are unique. We grew up side by side with Americans, but we are not Americans. Our culture is shaped by our unique experience. And I just had to say that before we move on.
Yeah, but then to your point, so one of those, the relationship to indigenous people is all politically could be identified as New African Independence Movement have a relationship with the American Independence Movement?
The American Indian Movement.
Indian, thank you for the correction. So,
yes.
All right.
Yes, and there's long been solidarity between American Indian Movement. Actually, some great literature and writings come from the indigenous movement about the New African Independence Movement through Ward Churchill, one of the premier indigenous scholars, who in a historical, I want to say, repeat of Malcolm X, when he say chickens comes home to roost after 9/11. He was a tenured professor at the University of Colorado, Boulder, and they untenured him from his university post for simply just saying that the United States is getting what it's put out in the world after 9/11 took place. And but he's been a stalwart scholar on indigenous studies. But if you ever read COINTELPRO papers, which highlights a lot of work, if you ever read Cages of Steel, which deal with the political imprisonment, he deals with all the independence movements, with the Puerto Rican independence movement, indigenous independence movement, New African independence movement. If you ever read Agents of Repression, what I'm saying, the FBI's war against the Black Panther Party and the American Indian movement. So, so there's a strong, solid relationship, and I think people need to understand that. But we don't know about these movements because it's not in public conversation. But moving on with our agenda.
Sometimes it's good it's not in public conversation.
Y'all say I gotta get my transition together.
Yes, you do good. All right, so we ready to just jump into the topic. I think our books, man, we can incorporate as we get into the topic. Man, you came up with it. Why don't you lead us, bro, in discussion?
First, I think we can do this starting with the books, and I think we'll start, I don't know, with Tawana or you, and then I'm gonna conclude, but then I'll transition because my book is gonna lead into the topic.
Okay.
My book is for the topic.
Well, there you go.
So you want to talk
All right,
about
Ashe. So I decided today to lean into myself as a poet,
Right
connected to the theme. So I brought this book, American Negro Poetry. It's a old book. I mean, this book is decades old.
Can you say the name again?
American Negro Poetry. And the reason why I want to raise this book is because this book lifts up, as an example, like Leroy Jones. We know him as Amiri Baraka, right? So this is the cultivation of a lot of artists as they were coming into their consciousness on a deeper level. And so I think this is an important book, not only because it references this historic time in history where the arts were cultivating a movement, but also it reaches still people who are still coming through that type of growth. And so I think that this is an important book, American Negro Poetry, among many other poetry books. And so I'll talk more about why I decided for this on our topic today as we go into the discussion.
Right on. Just as a sidebar, poetry is my introduction to critical literature. I mean, literally, I was locked up in our maximum facility. I believe it was 1990, and we can get books out the library, and I don't know nothing about no books at this time. I'm practically illiterate. I've never read a book, and it was a book called The Black Poets, and it was edited by Dudley Randall. Never heard of him. Never heard of no poets. Dudley Randall was from Detroit. It just so happened. Right. But in this book, an anthology similar to what you did, I see that's by Arna Bontemps, who was from the Harlem Renaissance, who also put out the book The New Negro, which is an anthology of other prose and writings from that period.
Yeah, that was that movement.
Yes.
Period.
Right. So poetry was very influential. You know, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni, Mary Evans,
Yeah.
Donnell Lee before he was Hockey My Booty.
Right.
You know, and you know, Larry Neal and
Come on, Kwasi.
Eldridge Etheridge Knight, who was a prisoner when he was writing. He had some powerful poems, so I was kind of drawn in.
Mhm.
Nigga Giovanni had a poem called "Nigga, Can You Kill?" You know what I'm
Kill
saying?
the white man and you.
Yeah, right. That, I mean, I was like, whoa.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, whoa, can you, you know what I'm saying? Can you kill the nigga in you and can the black man stand up? And I was like, man, it was heavy, you know, for my young, impressionable, and you know, open mind. So yeah, poetry is truly dope. I have a full appreciation of poetry. I wrote a poem or two on my day. Don't know none by heart. But yes, indeed. Do you want to talk about your books or you want to save it?
Yes, good brother.
All right, well, I'm gonna get to this. It's another book that I got when I was at Eye on Your Maximum facility. It's directly related to this topic.
Ooh, that's a well-read book there.
No, dog chewed it up.
Oh.
But it still had my my, you know, true story. I painted the ends of these books red, black, and green because I ain't gonna lie, I took this out the library. I stole this out the library, y'all.
Commandeered.
Yes, commandeered. You're right. That's the word. But no one was reading any critical literature. A brother shared a copy of this, and then I was looking for this book. And I took it, and they had the prison stamped on it, so they can't find that no more. That's over 30 years ago.
Right.
In any case, Wretched of the Earth is this book. It's the same version of it, and like I tell people, it took me a long time to be able to make sense of this book, but it was that subtitle that kept me trying to read this book, The Handbook for the Black Revolution that is changing the shape of the world. And I was like, the handbook?
Right.
So I mean, I struggled with this book for years before I kind of had that, what you call, intellectual breakthrough. And I began to make sense of it. And since that time, this book has become probably, if I had to have one book to make sense of reality, it was this, because this is very prophetic. And but it's another book that Fanon wrote. Well, it's not, he didn't write, it's a collection of his writings towards the African Revolution. And there's a chapter here I printed out because I ain't bring my reading glass. Because last time I brought my reading glass, I left them here. Therefore, I couldn't read it home.
What you saying? You scared you gonna leave them again? That's what,
yeah.
that's
And then I'm deprived of reading at home.
Right. Right.
In any case,
that's a serious reader there, y'all.
But in this book, he has a chapter called Decolonization and Independence. But it's only one thing relative to this topic that I just want to kind of lean into. And it's a segment where he says, it is a liberated individual who undertakes to build the new society. That's the subtitle for that section. You find it in the book. I can read it out the book. It ain't nothing but a sentence. He says, the liberation of the individual does not follow national liberation. An authentic national liberation exists only to the precise degree to which the individual has irreversibly began his own liberation. And he's talking about transformation. He's talking about you don't become a liberated person after the nation becomes liberated.
Right.
What kind of people are we going to be later on? What does tomorrow look like? What are your neighbors look like? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So it's really about, we hear a lot about healing in our today's community, but a lot of the healing is kind of had this individual tone to it. And it's almost as if our healing is really just creating a coping mechanism that we can sustain ourselves in the face of this brutal oppression and not combat it, not overcome it, not lay waste to it.
Right.
And you know, that's a concern because healing is not an individual vocation, it's a communal vocation. We need healing. Right. We need repair, the core word of reparations. And you know, like I said, we talk about repair. That is a healing. That is something that we pay ourselves. The true reparations cannot be paid in dollars and cents.
Come on.
A college degree, you know, a house cannot form the reparations that we need, because unlike other people who have suffered under the throes of war, because reparations is a war indemnity, it's a payment for war.
Mhm.
You know, we're
The
not
war would
paid.
have to cease, wouldn't it? And it
You're
hasn't.
right. No, the war continues absolutely,
Right.
but ultimately, it still have to be. We had to repair ourselves because the damage inflicted on us was very different than damage inflicted on other
So,
people.
Mhm.
so you jumped way up here, right?
Okay,
I,
bring,
no, no, I
bring me
get it.
back. Let's
Yeah,
balance it out.
yeah. So,
Balance it out.
because I agree with you, and I think we all do. But how do we simplify this for our audience? So, and being able to, what they say, peel back the onion.
Let's do it.
So when you talk about healing and transformation, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing, and I think what I see in society, we're taking this like therapy,
Mhm.
how therapy function in American society, like we're applying that type of context of trying to heal and transform ourselves. And I don't think that's what you're talking about, correct?
Absolutely not. I don't even advocate. I
Yeah.
don't even advocate seeing therapists, and that's a huge thing now.
Now,
I mean,
I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm a,
no, no.
Yeah,
Let me.
please back that up. Break
the
that down.
comments expressed by Kwasi
and
are
I'm
no
a-
way a
and I'm
reflection
gonna
of the
say this.
views and opinions.
Like I say, I'm gonna say this. Amos Wilson,
Right.
a Francis Cress Welsing, a Naeem Markbar, a Wade Nobles, possibly,
Mm-hmm.
because any therapist that's not addressing the impacts of oppression,
Right.
and if they truly understand oppression,
Right.
they're also fighting against that oppression.
Right.
Because otherwise, they're pacifying us. They're creating a coping mechanism. They're helping us. They're enabling oppression and enabling our coexistence with it. So I don't trust a therapist that ain't fighting against liberation, fighting against
how do you-
oppression.
That's a
Go
different
ahead, yeah, go
statement than I don't trust therapy.
Right.
So I agree with
yeah.
you. I agree, but that's just like that. So I'll think about this. Like we're not going to tell. We understand that the educational system to be flawed is an understatement, right? But we're not going to tell kids right now at this time don't go to school because your teacher is not a liberator. You see what I'm saying?
Can I add something to that?
Go ahead.
Before what's the store they opened up on what would in
Which
North End?
one?
The black
Black Detroit Black Food
yeah, what's
Co-op.
that store?
Oh, right.
It's not open yet.
I know the same one opened up. So
Right.
just to add on to your point, are you gonna go to another grocery store until they open that one up?
No, you're missing my point. No.
No,
That's,
well,
see, therapy is a choice.
we're just
When you say-
problematizing your
No,
point, heightening the
No,
contradiction.
and that's the contradiction is,
Mhm.
like I say, we seek healing. We can
Right.
heal. Listen, don't get me wrong. I seek therapy
Right.
through communal settings with people that I feel trust and listening and understand the problem, who can give me fair advice.
Right.
Me and G Mac, for instance.
Right.
We sit there and we dissect some of these issues. Me and you, we
Right.
dissect some of these issues.
You have access to that consciousness that allows for that to be a healing space for you. There's so many who don't. So for now, they just need to air their grievances and their pain and their trauma to
And that's
somebody
real.
who's
It's
willing to
real.
listen to it.
And it's real, but it's also a hustle because if they
It's been
and-
commodified.
But
Yeah.
hold on, Claus.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you.
Mhm.
The issue I have is though, it's like we're taking this hard stance of projecting our thinking on, again, we have to define and clearly define what oppression is, because the fact of the matter, we exist in America. So I go to the gas station, I go here and there. However, not everybody
I need gas.
Can I
Right.
It's unfortunate, right?
right, but I'm saying that to put an automatic on without qualifying. Again, Tawana, she's a therapist, and I need a therapist, and so she may
She's
not.
not a therapist, but
I mean,
just as an example.
Thank you. Thank you for that. As an example, I need something and for the now,
Right.
not necessarily, and I may not even understand why I need it in a larger context of being oppressed. Because I may not see that I'm oppressed, and that's what I'm saying. Like,
And I get the contradiction. I get the contradiction that both of y'all are raising. It's like sometimes you have to have that space to understand what the harm is, so that you can move beyond seeking that band-aid, right?
A coping mechanism.
Yeah, you need, so it's a scaffolding with anything, right? I'm a firm believer that there is a difference, between schooling and education. I have been in academic resistance for decades now. However, I'm an avid studier. Like I firmly believe that I need to be growing and learning, and being educated. However, I'm not in a position to tell young people or anyone at this point that school is not going to be a mechanism for them to grow their consciousness on some level.
Now, I don't think that's a good comparison. School, we're talking about the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Right.
Schools can provide those elements if done right.
But it's miseducation. Most times it's miseducation. It's not true
Get
history.
the current edition of the Rebuild. One of the Conrads wrote an article.
You disagree?
Attack on Black Studies equals a war on New Africa. It's an article in here, and it very succinctly but powerfully addresses the issue when we're talking about like critical race theory and a pushback, the elimination or cutbacks to Black Studies programs.
Right, but that's college. But that's college. That's most times.
But public schools are suffering. I was just thinking about the absence of like drafting and wood shop and home economics where people learn concrete skills. Drafting is a precursor to being an architect.
Right.
So let's go here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you consider yourself a healed man or a man on the journey of being healed?
Yeah, absolutely on the journey to being healed. I'm answering. I'm on the journey because I'm absolutely not fully healed.
Okay, that's
I'm
why
in a toxic space until I get all this dirt off me.
Okay, that's why I asked it in those two ways. This is where I'm trying to go, depending on which one you answer, to determine where I go with this. You opened up when Tawana talked about the American Negro poetry. You referenced what was the book? Black Poet. You read that was one of your. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, that was one of your first books that kind of started your journey.
Yes.
Hold that, what's the name up, bro?
Which one?
Yeah. So, comparing the Black Poet book to Wretched Earth.
This came maybe a year and a half, couple years later.
Ain't no matter. The point is, if you would have read that in the beginning, how would you have took that versus biting off and chewing on?
I probably would have never touched it. The poetry slowly made me start questioning things.
Hold on, rewind.
So I mean, I probably would have never touched it.
Time out.
And I think that's the point Yusef is trying to make. Sometimes in order for you to be open to receiving more concrete political education, the layers have to be unpeeled by maybe not the most conscious entry point, right? So if I'm not healed and I'm harming myself, I'm harming others, sometimes talking to somebody who can relate to that current space that I'm in is going to open up. I'm just using an example. Therapist is just a title,
right?
Exactly. I'm not against therapy in this setting. Like us as therapists, it's us helping each other. I'm absolutely for that.
Right, but Kwasi, you are decades past where you were 30, 40 years ago, right? So the Kwasi here right now understands that that's not where I'm going to get my healing from. But there's millions and millions of people who are not politically where you are. So they're not gonna get healing from this space right here.
Well, I'm suggesting
they need to get healing from someone who's in the same space.
Right now, I'm absolutely with you. We all have to find our place.
Right.
What I'm suggesting now, because it don't get said,
right,
is that we have to depend on one another.
That's true.
We have to look towards one another. Part of the healing is we have to get out of this individualism.
This insular, closed off. Yeah.
And we have to see ourselves as connected. Mm-hmm. Our problem is we're not the only ones with these problems. We might have a different manifestation. It might hit us to a greater or lesser extent than the next person, but we all face these problems. Police brutality hit you last week, it hit me this week.
Right.
In different ways. You got beat down. They just, overwrote the tickets
for you in the morning,
or whatever.
They come for me that night.
So I mean, but the thing is, we have to begin to create a community. Like we're talking about like one of the things that's happening, and I had brought some notes from showing how Fanon, his prescience, his prophetic view. He was talking about how in the course of the struggle, and I'm thinking like hypothetically George Floyd protests, or Mike Brown, or Freddie Gray, or all these different protests, and people be angry and mad, and we feeling hate for the system, and then it all fade off.
Right.
A lot of the fade off happens when concessions are made. The system start, apologize.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but a lot of it do.
Yeah.
You know, some people get their modest objectives. Maybe the cop get arrested, don't get convicted. You know, down the line.
In that moment, people are seeking a reprieve from pain and trauma. And I mean, it's the reason why we have mass surveillance in Detroit, right? Folks are afraid and don't feel safe. And the only mechanism of
we
safety,
see each other as enemies.
yeah, and the only mechanism of safety that they have has been spread through propaganda and narrative and you know, dominant negative narratives. So until we have a different story and a larger mechanism for healing, as you're saying, for those people who don't feel like they can go beyond policing, they're gonna continue to pursue that as a mechanism for safety.
Okay, we got another book on that.
Yeah, so this conversation is leading to one of my books, The War Before, the true life story of Sophia Bakari. She was a member of the East Coast Black Panther Party, also of the Black Liberation Army. And I bring this book particular. She didn't join the Black Panther Party because of the barrettes. She didn't join the Black Panther Party because of the leather outfits, the newsletters. She actually found them very distasteful. I repeat, she actually found them very distasteful how they engaged in their community. She joined the Black Panther Party. One day she saw some members out there selling the Black Panther Party newspaper, and they got harassed by the police. I repeat, they got harassed by the police. That awakened something in her because they had not broken, quote unquote, any law, right. sort of speak. So again, our entry point are different, but also within the dynamic, here's a vehicle that's in our community that is highly represented on some levels. However, they're disconnected to some degree of reaching our group of people. Mm-hmm. And so this is what social condition does. It awakens us at different ways. So in terms of healing, so I wrote down as we open up, healing from what? Right. Like what you may be healing from may be different. What I'm healing from.
My healing might cause you harm.
True, but also understanding what healing is, understanding what transformation is. So again, I think what we can agree up here. We have a clear idea of what we think transformation is, and I think we're applying that to our community because they don't function from a political context. So to your point that you was making about like the George Floyd thing, I think I mean probably Tawana can relate to me in terms of in the space that we're in. A lot of us are like, I'm just tired of being Black. I'm tired of talking about it, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think for
I just want to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, a lot of people are just I just want to be.
And that is the individualism that continues to perpetuate
it's not
our oppression.
No, that's not.
That absolutely does.
That's not.
It might continue to.
It perpetuates it because it separates us from one another, and we seeking our own island of peace.
It's not seeking our own island of peace. It's the fact. It's the absence of a movement. It's the absence of the things that you're talking about. That the fact that it's.
So how do you?
Let me finish. Let me finish real quick. This point. The pressure. What we grew up in, what they say, pressure does what?
Burst pipes.
Pressure does what?
Burst pipes.
So if a pressure is on my motherfucking back 24/7,
I'm seeking a valve. I'm just trying to release some pressure, which doesn't always mean that I'm contradicting a desire for a larger movement. It just means there isn't one for me to tap into in this moment. So now I'm in self-preservation.
Correct.
And I agree though. I agree. But here's where the contradiction lies in. You wearing a shirt that I love. Self-determination. Self-determination, self-preservation. Tell me where the contradictions lie, because sometimes when we think about self-determination, we haven't created a mechanism for it not to be self-preservation. People are thinking about, how do I escape this? How do I individually escape this? They're not. We still conflict movements with moments. We think every moment, political moment that energizes our people is a movement.
No.
Let me go with my second book.
No, you can do that. Hold on 1 second. Let me do this. I think we all misunderstanding each other. I said,
I think we finally on the same.
No.
Record this.
Our public enemy say, the road to freedom is seldom traveled by the multitude. So we just say back in the Moors, you know what I'm saying?
He going down memory lane now.
How that saying go? Some multitude, some proof of truth or something. I forgot how it go. But go ahead.
Give up.
I was trying
let me go. It might come to you. So my second book, The Seeds of Time.
Mm-hmm.
I just got to throw this out there to y'all real quick.
It's autographed.
It's autographed, baby. It's autographed. It's autographed by a lot of the.
You need to have that in a book. You need to have a copy that you
He
bring
ain't,
around.
he ain't got no
Put
respect. He ain't got no
Put
respect.
that one up.
You see that booyah?
Put that one up.
And it's a first edition.
You need to put that up.
You read this book, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
the blue, the black classic press version, the
Yeah.
big blue.
Yeah.
What's significant?
Not the autograph version.
Right. So
No.
what's significant about this book, Seed the Time, written by Bobby Seale, actually Sophia Bakari helped edit it.
Oh, didn't know that.
When Malcolm X gets assassinated, it hit Huey, it hit Bobby, and I know like everybody across the world very hard. And they said, "Fuck it, we gonna create our own Malcolm X. We gonna be." So to your point, and where you said that release that vow, and this is what it created the opportunity to be able to organize in that community, but also it required for them to also continue to transform. But and I'll just go further ahead. We see that they didn't necessarily transform totally because this word transformation is still growing. We learned more things about it than what we knew at the time.
I was about to say later reflection.
Absolutely.
People learned that wasn't actual, like that was a means to an end. It wasn't the end.
And so again, I mean, like what you have with the shit, it's a release pressure. What we have with the
No, I don't quite look at it.
Can I finish? Can I finish my point?
I
Can I finish?
When you finish
what
your point,
it is. You telling me what it is.
Wait, when you
have
finished the point, I want to hear what you see.
Yeah, can I finish? I mean, this is my interpretation. When I say it's a release point in terms as a mechanism of organizing, creating opportunities for folks. Like I was just talking to somebody recently.
Maybe it's not a release pressure for Kwasi, but it's
Absolutely.
definitely,
No,
but it's definitely.
What you mean? Maybe I can relate to it.
But
it's
definitely a release pressure for me when I come to the shed.
Thank you.
And I get political education, or I purchase things that show pride in who I am. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a release pressure for me. It might not be for you because you're
in it. You're in it.
But I want to hear what he meant by that, and you didn't gave him his answer.
She's just being witness at my brother. Amen. Hallelujah on this day. This ain't even Sunday, but it's a release pressure in the sense of you said you painted that book red, black, and green. How often people where you live at see red, black, and green? Know what the hell it means?
People over there see it every day.
Exactly. That's but before you moved over there, when did they see it? I mean, people come and stop. I mean, now they're somewhat.
I'm trying to understand that point though.
I'm saying you created something. What you say?
You introduced something that is not.
I'm introducing something now.
Right. Go back to France from now. The point you read about transformation. Transformation, it doesn't come tomorrow. It comes today.
Right.
That's what the shed. The mama cool house.
No, I understand that.
Right. I'm saying it's
intentional.
Right. It's meeting people.
Or Detroit is different, right?
Detroit
when
different.
you ride down these streets, you're not seeing green lights. You seeing Detroit is different. You seeing Mama Cool House. You seeing the shed. So that's seeping into your psyche minute by minute. Like, oh, that's an alternative vision.
Correct. Exactly.
Right.
That's a part of the process of transformation.
And it's hitting people who are not healed.
Right.
I mean, and I'm talking about not healed in the sense of what we talked about, niggas
who haven't had these interventions.
It shifts the narrative.
Right. No, but it shifts them in a way where you have to go and you resolve. Like somebody comes up to the shed, got the beer bottle, got the weed. I was like, they don't even feel comfortable walking up, like, because this doesn't fit their norm. Same to the Mama Cool House, or because we're creating a new reality,
right?
Which offers and entertains for that moment to taste what healing looks like.
So it becomes therapeutic.
Oh shit!
Until wait, Kwasi. Until
y'all going somewhere.
Wait, listen. But listen, but listen real quick. It becomes therapeutic because you've created a condition now where somebody can walk in and get your counsel. You have literature. You're going to provide conversation that's going to heighten their consciousness. But the entry point,
I had no idea what I was doing.
The entry point is just visually seeing the shed as an intervention in everyday life.
No, we're talking about.
Okay, y'all created institutions. Is it bands?
No, when I was talking about was therapy in terms of these professional therapists who detached from our day-to-day lives.
How?
But they can't be detached.
Right.
How can they be detached? They live in our daily lives. They're receiving.
I mean, so you have to
maybe. I mean, we
Because-
have some, you know what I'm saying? People Marie Lucas, Patrice, you know what I'm saying? Yes.
Yeah.
She's in the community. There are people that we can refer to, but they also engaged in a different level. I ain't talking about just making an appointment to go sit in somebody's office and kick back for an hour and just spill all my troubles.
Right.
That's disconnected from my life. That's what I was referring to. That's what I was
Ignorance
referring
is
to.
not necessarily disconnect. Like these people are still experiencing the same America we're experiencing. How they interpret it or internalize it is a whole nother.
I'm not gonna pay somebody
Can you repeat
that's
that,
not
please?
actively struggling against our
We
oppression.
need a rewind.
That's where I was
Quasi,
coming from.
Can I get a rewind over here?
Yeah, please.
I'm just saying, like, just because someone doesn't engage or internalize what the struggle is, does not mean they're not experiencing it. And so people come into their consciousness in different ways. They have to be offered an opportunity to have that intervention, though. Yours happened to be in prison. Mine happened to be running up to the urban network one day, or you know what I'm saying? So
oppression. I mean, listen.
But not everybody understands.
Y'all, we're not talking about interventions. We're talking about we were talking about healing.
But what do you
and
call
transformation?
It? But what would you call? What would
you call? But that's not what I was referring to.
But what I'm saying is, what would you call sickness? What would you call the medium between sickness and healing?
The medium between sickness and healing.
Yeah. What's the in between?
What's the in between? How do you get over to healing?
There's
an intervention?
No. Answer it for me.
There's an intervention into your sickness.
Yes.
Some kind of way.
I was arguing that it's more organically in a communal setting of us. That because when I have conversations with people, a lot of times they don't even know I'm seeking therapy. I'm just kicking it. Might be just like you say, releasing some things.
But you know that hurt people, right? You internalized that hurt people.
This brother say it all the time.
So if you put a bunch of hurt people in a room together, do we wait until
are they sincerely in each other's interest? A person sincerely in interest, because if I know your pain. Listen, when I was in prison, we used to have these little groups, informal groups among prisoners.
Right.
Not all these necessarily Muslims. We talking about regular brothers. We had we used one book for these sessions. We would read passages and then we just kick it. I done seen these
Your intervention was the book.
No, it was our conversation. We would read passages and talk, and brothers would talk about things that they hadn't talked about because we was in a setting. Because Amos Wilson was help frame a setting. His book, the book we was reading was Black on Black Violence,
what would your
self-annihilation in the service of white domination.
So what would your conversation have been without the passages from that book?
I wouldn't have knew what to say. Without that, that's
the intervention.
Your intervention.
No, that was my intervention, and I brought that to the table.
Exactly.
But now but then the conversation became more organic because now we talking to each other about our different and similar struggles.
Right. So we agreeing.
And so we were having therapy.
Right.
Amongst each other.
Right.
And that's what I'm arguing for.
And we're not disagreeing with that. We're expanding
what y'all talking about?
Can I finish?
I don't know.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
I'm pushing back on something.
That's fine. But
there is no pushback.
I don't see it.
We're not necessarily. We're not pushing back. We're expanding. Because
I don't understand. I'm not arguing with none of y'all. What y'all saying? I don't think that has nothing to do with what I said, though.
Can I finish? Well, we're expanding because you explain your point when you say, "Man, I don't do therapy," and which was not to throw therapists away, right? But then you say the therapists who don't understand our oppression.
I trash them.
All right, but we're saying like that's because that's your thought process should not be the thought process for everyone else.
They ain't got a liberation psychology. Ain't nothing they can say.
Right, but that's fair.
They can't push Freud and some of these folks at me. No.
I mean, so Kobe, he goes to all boys school, right? And senior year they had to go they had to do a retreat. And I was like, hey, what you like about the retreat? He was like, we had an opportunity to really get to know each other. They had this session where we just like talked about some things that we don't normally talk about. And through that process, I was able to learn kind of what you just described, right? However, the school he goes to is Catholic in terms of ideology, right? So predominantly black boys, some black teachers, whatever. But it's not rooted in black liberation. However, does that take away from his experience being able to relate and connect with other black boys who he didn't know, open up, creating an opportunity? What for the first level of our pain is what? Silence, of holding it in, figuring out how to talk about it. Where again, because I'm mad, what Tawana just said, hurt people hurt people. So getting to the point where you're describing heal people. That's what you're talking about. You've created
No.
can I finish?
That ain't what I was saying either.
Can I finish though? You can counter me all day. You created our alternative way of how to engage folks based upon what you see. And I do it as well to some degree. What I'm saying, not everybody, because they don't necessarily agree or believe in a liberation theology, doesn't mean that they can't help us. That's the only pushback that I have.
Yeah, bum, you can get good advice from a bum on the street. I mean, yes. So I mean, that's
most times better advice than most.
Right, because they're gonna be 100 with you. You know what I'm saying? So no, I absolutely agree. The transformation, like I say, at the end of the day, oppression is going to continue until we end it. Period. You know what I'm saying? We can continue to cope. We can try to just make do and try to live the best life, our best lives, as they say, the best life we can under oppression. We can seek all these, personal, individualistic advances in our lives. But ultimately, it's our dependence and reliance upon one another. And around our struggles, because at the end of the day, we all suffering from one thing ultimately, which is colonial domination. All those other things spring from that. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
So our relationships, our poverty of spirit.
We wouldn't suffer from poverty at all if we didn't suffer from poverty of spirit.
I mean, but all of these things stem from a common root, though they manifest in everybody differently.
Right.
Some people come up at a home maybe without a father, and the mother was abusive, you know what I'm saying? And that's a different experience. It could be in
hold on. I can't just let that. But you mean mother is abusive?
In some situations, it's like that.
Break it down. We make statements without no clarification. That sounds very sexist.
Hold on. I'm using
but you're not breaking it down. That's what I'm saying.
So
when you
said I wasn't done.
But you kept going though.
No, I see what's happening here. You taking it as you taking it from a personal point of view.
I'm not taking it personal, nothing.
I ain't even talking.
I'm asking you just to clarify.
Hold on. I'm using a random hypothetical.
Right.
I'm using a hypothetical scenario.
So there's a potential for any parent to be abusive.
Who grew up in a house with no water, no heat.
Right.
And everybody punked them because they was in bummy clothes at school.
Right.
It's a bunch of different scenarios that people come from.
But there's potential.
And they all affect us and manifest in us differently.
Right.
And so we don't all have the same exact, but it all stems from colonial domination. But we can learn from each other by dealing with these things in a communal setting, because I can understand you, you can understand me. And now we have a broader understanding about us.
Right.
In confrontation with the real problem.
Right.
Because a lot of times we skirting around that part.
Right.
And that's that's my main concern. We always skirting around the real thing we need to be struggling against.
I hear you. Here's where it gets sticky. If we want to have a moment and a small cadre of folks who all think alike, then fine. We speak from the highest level of consciousness. And that's
that ain't what this is.
But what I'm saying is there are a lot of people that are missing from these dialogues, and that's because the quote unquote movement has already figured it out most times and isn't really interested in hearing from, not like back in the day.
Why are we online,
from what
Tawana?
I've learned, I'm sorry. What I'm saying is, back in the day, I feel like there was more reverence towards the lumpen who were on the street, who had the front line understanding of what was happening. And now I'm finding a lot of times in the politicized spaces that there's either you're highly conscious or you completely your voice is irrelevant to the discussion. And I feel like we are trying to create a space where anybody, no matter what level you are on the political education spectrum, can tune in and get some seeds, right? And understand. So we might have people who go to, not to bring therapists back up, but like we might have, but I'm just saying, we might have people who tune in who like that is what their process is right now. So I think all I'm saying is I'm pursuing personally, not to make it individual, but personally, I'm pursuing a movement that has an entry point for all of us, no matter where we are in the spectrum of consciousness. And so that's the challenge. The challenge is to not be so frustrated with the people who have not come into this level of consciousness that we close off an entry point for them to be part of the dialogue.
I'm missing some of this because first, we on a podcast. Really, ultimately, this should be an educational format, right?
Right.
So we talking, ideally, somebody listening, hopefully they get something out of our dialogue.
Right.
Who's frustrated with people that's not, don't get me wrong, that exists. That phenomenon exists.
I'm
but
just naming.
That's not here though.
I'm not. It wasn't directed at any. And I was
in
general.
But it still kind of comes across in that kind of way because it's like what keeps saying it. You said it and Yusef said it, as if like a political consciousness. We're talking about something as basic as healing.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I was talking about. I push back against therapists as as a professional institution,
right.
Not as therapy as a need, because we definitely, I definitely encourage that.
Early on, I said
need
it's
it.
been
We all need it. We all need it.
Early on, I said it's been heavily commodified.
So, and at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? But it came across as if something that I said was politically beyond someone's ability to grasp. And I don't think that's so.
I mean, just so as we close up, and you made
that's my impression.
Right. You made a strong position, bucking down on everything starts and ends with colonialism. I don't think neither one of us would disagree with that. What we're saying, or what I'm saying, before we can get to the description of colonialism, there's other dynamics. When I say other dynamics, other descriptions that we can use to get people to digest. It's trying to get someone to eat a steak when they're never eaten a steak before.
So if you never say colonialism, they'll never hear it.
But you cut me off though. I mean, I'm not, again, this is the point. I think in terms of generalization of the frustration that's being communicated, no one's saying we shouldn't say colonialism. It's a process. How do we talk about it? Where, again, if I go to the average guy, if you came to me 40 years ago when I was JoJo and you say, man, you're a thug because you're oppressed because you're colonial, and I would say, nigga, get the fuck out of my face. What the fuck is you talking about?
I did the same thing.
Right, exactly.
So less than that.
Right. So I mean, and I'm saying, making that as a point, which you already know.
No, but that ain't where we start. We on a podcast where we talking. We can't use the language that matters.
Who said we
couldn't? Who we wait? Who gonna say it?
When did we say we couldn't?
Yeah.
Did you say that?
But it sounds as if like that is above someone's ability to comprehend.
But Kwasi, we're not saying that.
No, we're not talking about the language. We're talking about the process of bringing people into the understanding of what you're saying.
Of healing?
Yeah. Well,
the saying that we need each other?
No, you missed all the agreement.
No, not that part.
Okay.
No.
No show, man. I mean, but also part of the show is again.
I'm right, and I am going to be pushing an advanced line. Because I come from the same place.
You don't have
what
to.
We say
we not in disagreement. Your
mind. Oh well, I don't know what all I don't get it.
Well, for those tuning in, passionate political struggle. Here it is. This is a microcosm of what it is to be in society. Absolutely. Everybody's not going to be 100% alignment. As a matter of fact, in order for you to get to the highest level of consciousness, you have to struggle through these ideas. And so
ideological struggle.
So there'll be frustration, there'll be challenges, there'll be pushback. And that's how you get to the level of humanity that Kwasi is trying to push us to get to.
We all pushing. We all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Ashe.
Not the same.
All right.
I see you guys. Dope show, man. Dope. I mean, electric. Good, man.
All right. Peace,
I think it's
y'all.
the share.
Peace. See you guys in 2 weeks.
God damn it.